John King USA, CNN, weeknights 7 Eastern.
Ambassador Jon Huntsman delivered a resignation letter to the White House today disclosing his plans to leave his Beijing post effective April 30th. What makes this political news and not just diplomatic news is that Huntsman is a Republican and a former Utah governor who already has a shadow 2012 campaign organization forming. Is he leaving the president's team to challenge the president? Let's debate the diplomacy of that with Democratic strategist Donna Brazil, Republican strategist Kevin Madden, and John Avlon, a founding member of the centrist group No Labels. Mr. Madden, I want to go to you first on this one. A, you're a Republican. B, you worked in the last campaign, and you're still close with the former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, who knows Mr. Huntsman and knows him pretty well. Is he in?
Mr. Huntsman?
Yes.
I believe those are all
I have
the
no doubt Mr. Romney's
in. Those are all the signs I think you need. You have, word out there that he's already put together an inner circle, the fact that there's probably going to be some outreach now to fundraisers, and resigning your ambassadorship is probably a clear sign. As clear as it made in the Newsweek article that we saw 2 weeks ago, that he's seriously thinking about it. So I'd expect to probably see an announcement very soon in the spring.
Donna, it's the other party. I guess back in the Truman administration, the Secretary of War challenged the president. But can you remember anything like this? A guy leaving an administration to run against his boss at the moment?
Well, not leaving the administration, but back in the 1960s, Henry Cabot Lodge was the ambassador to Vietnam, and someone wrote his name in New Hampshire. He won the New Hampshire primary. He later lost the primary, didn't resign his position, but this is not unheard of. But I want to say something about Mr. Huntsman. He's a very attractive candidate. I will have to, I guess, go back and forth between looking at him and Mitt Romney just in terms of checking my eyesight.
Now. Superficial there from Donna. John Avlon, what profile does he fit? He's a more moderate. He's a conservative, but he's a more moderate than many of the prospective candidates we have seen running around. He has been more moderate on gay rights, for example.
Yeah, he's decidedly center-right with executive experience, and I think this is the first candidate that the White House is genuinely concerned about. Now, the big picture question, of course, is whether someone who's been served in the Obama administration can survive a Republican primary. But he really is in a strong position. He could have just ended up being a spoiler for Mitt Romney, but nobody should doubt the ripples this is going to have throughout the race, not only the GOP side of the field, but overall. And his father is a very highly respected philanthropist through a lot of conservative circles and a mentor to a lot of conservative opinion makers. So that's a very significant blunting force to those folks who might say he's too centrist for the GOP right now.
Who raised money for Mitt Romney in 2008.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that money's dried up for Governor Romney. Governor Romney's got to look elsewhere. John Avlon just made an interesting point. How would the Obama administration's service affect Governor and Ambassador Huntsman if he's running in a Republican primary? Well, remember, President Hu Jintao of China was just here, and Jon Huntsman was in the front row, and President Obama was asked about, at the time, what was a scenario, a possibility that Ambassador Huntsman might leave to run for president. Here's what the President of the United States had to say.
I couldn't be happier with the ambassador's service, and I'm sure he will be very successful in whatever endeavors he chooses in the future. And I'm sure that him having worked so well with me will be a great asset in any Republican primary.
Now, you have a bias, Mr. Madden. Obviously, you're on Team Romney. But would that matter? Would that, in and of itself, is that a liability in a Republican primary that he served 2 years in the Obama administration?
I think right now, people in Washington know who Jon Huntsman is. Voters in Iowa, voters in New Hampshire, South Carolina, Michigan, all the early primary states don't. And that announcement, that part of his bio, is going to be in the lead of every single introductory profile about Mr. Huntsman. And at a time where not many of these activist Republican voters in many of these early primary states are looking very favorably upon the Obama administration. It's going to be something that he's going to have to shoulder. It's a burden that he's going to have to shoulder.
John, I spoke of his attractiveness, and I wasn't just talking about his looks. I was talking about the fact that he's worked in a Democratic administration, and while it may not play in the early primaries or caucuses, I think independent voters and others in certain states where they can vote, he might be an attractive alternative to the hard right.
And here's another. Go ahead, John.
No, that's the really important point here. Like all centrist candidates, he's a better general election candidate than a primary candidate. But the fact that he's worked with the administration, ensures a degree of civility in a campaign and allows him to be somewhat above the fray with the uglier edges of the conservative populism we've seen over the last 2 years. So he's got the credentials philosophically and in terms of policy. But it really allows him to take a different tack that a lot of folks in the Senate and independent voters in particular in a state like New Hampshire could find very refreshing.
Here's what I also find very interesting. Now, President Obama is the exception to the rule, so people at home would say this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But governors tend to get elected president. Governors tend to win because of the chief executive experience, because of their fundraising ability. So you had Governor Pawlenty, who's moving around. There's no question he's going to run for the Republican nomination. Governor Romney's about to start his book tour. I don't think there's any question he's going to run for the Republican nomination. And we've been asking, is Governor Barbour going to run? Is Governor Perry going to run? Does a Governor Huntsman running take up more of the field, take up more of the space in the oxygen?
Governor Daniels and also possibly Governor Gary Johnson. I think it makes that space.
Sarah Palin.
And former Governor Sarah
Palin.
Palin.
We shouldn't forget her.
It becomes a very competitive space. And I think one of the mistakes that we make right now, but at first glance trying to analyze who's up, who's down on something like this, is you really don't know until all of those folks are in the field. There are going to be people who are going to be going out there now, a lot of candidates going out and trying to develop a competence narrative, an executive narrative. Well, that space gets very, very competitive. Who's going to break out of it? So we really don't know until all of these candidates are in.
And can you run John Avalon? It's a contrarian argument. You mentioned the point that he's more to the center. Rudy Giuliani just talked about this with Piers Morgan last week, and Rudy's last campaign was, shall we say, not so good. I'm going to be kind. So I don't view him as the guy. But in a race where you have everyone saying, well, the Tea Party is the juice of the party right now, so I got to go right, and further right, can you run a primary campaign? It's a contrarian argument saying, I'm electable. I'm not one of them. I'm the anti-Palin, if you will.
Yeah, look, there is a space in the field in the center right now, and that's what Rudy was speaking to, and I think Huntsman addresses it as well, especially in a state like New Hampshire, where independent, with open primaries, where independent voters outnumber Democrats or Republicans. That is a winning proposition, potentially. It's not going to help you in Iowa. It's not going to help you in South Carolina, but it really can make a difference in a state like Iowa, and then pivoting into Super Tuesday, where the electability argument should carry the day. It is not academic. It's very real.
But social conservatives want to know his position on abortion.
George H.W. Bush, the last, I would say, centrist Republican to win the nomination, and he sort of had an advantage. He was wrong.
But Huntsman is going to get in trouble on abortion, on gay marriage, and a number of other issues that have really hurt a lot of Republicans.
He'll make the soul searching on the Republican side interesting.